Okay, it's week 13. It's time to answer some questions. Can Indiana play with the big boys? BYU, Arizona State, who wants the Big 12? Colorado taking on Kansas. The Jayhawks a bit revitalized. Upset BYU last week. Can they do it again? 2 consecutive weeks, knocking off the number 1 team in the Big 12. The SEC, of course, is a mess. 2 potential upsets. Don't discount Florida in the swamp. Don't discount Auburn on the plains. Although the Auburn Tigers have been one of the most miserable teams in college football this year. Miserable. Pathetic. However, a desperate team playing at home on a national TV stage. All the games are on national TV. I get that now. But meaning a true national TV stage, ABC, network television, War Eagle, on the plains, at night, Jordan-Hare Stadium against Texas A&M. That's why Vegas knows. Texas A&M, just a 2.5-point favorite. Think about that. 8-2 Texas A&M. Beat LSU. Beat some other decent teams. Top 15 in the country. Clear path to the SEC championship game in the playoff. Only a 2.5-point favorite on the road against Auburn. Florida, 10.5-point dog at home, although they played their best ball game of the year last weekend against LSU, taking on Ole Miss. Look out, Ole Miss. Look out, Texas A&M. Look out, Ohio State. You know who else should look out this weekend? James Franklin, venturing to the upper Midwest. Somebody check the weather in Minneapolis on Saturday. Regardless, that game gets my attention. 3:30 Eastern, CBS. Minnesota 6-4 was one of the hottest teams in college football with 4 consecutive wins. Who cooled off Minnesota? Rutgers? That's why sometimes you can't predict this sport. Minnesota, one of the hottest teams in college football, playing extremely well against decent competition. Rutgers looked like complete garbage, and they pulled off the win. Now Minnesota's got a bye week, so they've got the motivation. They got a reality check at Rutgers. Bye week at home. They know what Penn State's playing for. And I think we've all checked off the box on Penn State thinking, we're not really sold on Penn State. We really don't believe that they have a shot to do anything in the playoff. But in regards to making the playoff, yeah, Penn State, easy, 11-1. They had 1 game this season. They blew it. They couldn't beat Ohio State, of course. But hey, that's okay because they will just trounce everyone else. We have some really important games. And those are the games we know about to be important. And yes. Army. Stepping up to the big leagues, you could say, at Yankee Stadium against Notre Dame. How about that one? Army, 2-touchdown dog against Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a similar clash with Navy about a month ago. 52-17. Navy played an awful game, but also showed that they're Navy. They're not supposed to be able to play with Notre Dame. NFL players and our country's finest in another vocation. No comparison. But Navy didn't play well. Army's a better team than Navy. All the metrics tell us this. The eye test tells us this, that Army is a better team than Navy. Can they hang with the Irish? We have a lot of upset potential situations out there. BYU and Arizona State is just a fascinating game from the standpoint of, hey, winner takes a huge step, the step toward getting to the Big 12 championship game. The winner is all but assured to play in the Big 12 championship game. Arizona State at home playing its biggest game since when? since forever. Arizona State playing its biggest game since forever. I would argue that Arizona State is playing its biggest game since 1996. 1996. This is Arizona State's biggest game since Jake Plummer led the troops in 1996. That team, of course, came within seconds of winning a national championship. Some forget that. It's a famous Rose Bowl. Well, they're all famous to a certain extent, but one of the great Rose Bowls of all time, one of the greatest and most important matchups in the Rose Bowl of all time. Of course, Ohio State came back and beat Arizona State and Jake Plummer on New Year's Day of 1997. But without that final drive engineered by Joe Germain to David Boston, Arizona State would have wrapped up the national championship. They came that close. They've won Pac-12 championships. They've played in a Pac-12 championship game since then, but those teams had no chance. They were nowhere close to being in national championship contention. So therefore, this game on Saturday at home in Tempe against BYU is Arizona State's biggest game since 1996. Do appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. We've left the call-in link there in the chat. Disputed national champions, pick it up. We just referred to 1996, by the way. So if you love college football, I'm telling you, believe me, you'll enjoy it. And you know what? If you come back and say, Mark, I did not enjoy that book, I'll say, you know what? You've learned probably more expensive lessons for more than $10. So stop taking my word for it. No, you will like it. It's a good book, good read if you love college football and you're here. You love college football. The 1990s historical reset of college football. It's not just a history book. It's not even close to being half a history book. It is a fun read toward the future of college football, but definitely puts spin on history. We're too smart for that here at the Voice of College Football. You and I, we just don't take the results for what has been shoved down our throats throughout history that, oh, they're the national champion. That's what the AP writers told us. No. No. We're smarter than that. We're better than that. We think for ourselves. Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. When you shop on Amazon, please use the link that we provide in the description section. And I know that that's a big ask. I really, truly do, because there are podcasts out there that I enjoy, and I many times watch them and enjoy them, love the content. And I don't think to hit the like button. I don't think to do what they ask me to do. I can't think of anything in particular, but they're selling all sorts of products. Now, I'm not asking you to purchase a product. I am simply, well, this one, but I am simply asking, when you do purchase a product, why send that full $1 to Amazon? Send 95 cents to Amazon, send 5 cents to the Voice of College Football. And you will help keep us in business. All right, first call of the night. We got the Real MVP showing up.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing just fine.
Well, let me say the most important game that nobody's talked about for this week is the BYU versus Arizona State game. Do you agree?
Nobody's talked about it.
Hardly anybody. Like 5 people have talked about it. Nobody in the mainstream media. Well, you're not part of the mainstream media, or the corporate media, I should say. You're mainstream, but they're corporate.
Yeah, I don't know who those people are. But anyway, go ahead.
ESPN,
okay,
Fox, CBS Sports.
Right. Gotcha.
The people like Desmond Howard who says, I see on the sheet we're picking Kansas State versus Arizona State. I don't even know why we're picking this game. Those type of people. Have you seen that comment?
Desmond Howard, I wish we only have 20 people watching right now. I wish we had like 2,000 people watching. Anyway, just to let more people know that Desmond Howard needs to be ignored. I have never heard anything meaningful come out of the man's mouth. And I'm sorry to say that because he's a great athlete, one of the great college football players ever to play at the University of Michigan. And he won a Super Bowl MVP. So I'm not discounting his athleticism. That is phenomenal. But ever since he chose this field, which, of course, the only reason he's got a platform is because he was an outstanding player. I have never heard the man say anything that was worth my time. Nothing. Zero. Go ahead.
Well, what did you think about that take I just laid out? That he doesn't know why they're picking between Arizona State and Kansas State when both teams were 7-2.
He's either trying to just stir people up or he's a moron. And based on other things that he has stated, I choose the latter.
And another Galaxy Brain take that was put out by ESPN during the college football playoff rankings, Mark, okay? And this tells you how great our sport is and the health of the sport right now is Indiana should sit their starting quarterback. That way the committee doesn't have a data point for Indiana to look at. That was actually a thought process that was put out there that Indiana should just sit their quarterback.
Who said that? Do we know?
I don't know the name of the guy. I don't want to say the wrong guy. It wasn't Reese or Booger McFarland. It was I want to say Joey was his name, but I could be wrong.
Joey Galloway?
I think, yeah, that sounds right.
Okay, let me be fair because I guess a lot of Michigan fans, if they hear me say this, will think that I'm piling on Desmond Howard because he played at Michigan. Joey Galloway is pretty much just as useless as Desmond Howard. And so is Booger McFarland. I did not intend to just rail on commentators today, but those are three of the worst. They're horrible.
Right, but what does it say? I agree with you, but what does it say about the health of our sport where somebody can even have the thought process of, hey, we got this game between two top 5 teams that are going to be playing. You know what would be best for one of the teams? To sit their starting quarterback, and that way the committee has no data points to look at if they're losing the game because they don't have all their starters in the game. How does that tell you about the health of our sport? And how much does that show you how meaningless a large portion of the regular season is right there?
Well, my initial response would be something similar to what I said about Desmond Howard. I question as to whether they are just saying that to get clicks and to rile people up, or if they truly believe that. I don't know how to answer that because if it's truly something that they believe that they should do, I can't. And these gentlemen played the sport at the highest level.
It doesn't seem like you have a lot of faith and optimism that they'll do the right thing for the sport or care about the integrity of the sport.
No, I don't know what to think anymore about the stances that some of these guys take. I think that they look around and they see Paul Feinbaum and Pat McAfee and other people getting attention, and that's what they're seeking.
Yeah, I agree on large portions of that. Mark, how come this weekend of games there's a lot of, and not just in the SEC is a cupcake week, but there's a lot of cupcake games this week. It feels like more than usual. UConn's playing Syracuse, for example. Florida State is playing a team that's somehow worse than them, which is kind of amazing in its own right because, Florida State's just Florida State outside of Purdue. And maybe even including Purdue, they're arguably the worst team in the country. So why does it feel like nobody's playing anybody great this week?
Well, in the ACC and the SEC, they have a certain scheduling quirk where, of course, a number of those teams, and you're very involved with one of these rivalries, is played between the two conferences. Therefore, that takes out a conference game being the final game for 8 of these teams in the SEC and the ACC. And then on top of that, a lot of them, mostly in the SEC, want to play nobody preparing for the rivalry game. Therefore, the third to the last week of the season is when many of these teams in the ACC and the SEC are playing their final conference game. That shouldn't be. That's bad scheduling. Shouldn't happen. So
Yeah.
these teams do what they want. And so I have no issue with the particular schools doing what they want to benefit themselves and enhance their scheduling to their advantage. That's what they should do.
Right. As a viewer of college football, I feel like it'd help, and as somebody, cares about the TV ratings and stuff, because that's all that basically matters. It'd feel more engaging if more teams had a chance to win their conference. But in the ACC, for example, Clemson's guaranteed to only have one loss in the ACC. So a bunch of teams are eliminated just because Clemson's 7-1. So if everybody only played 6 games up to this point, then there would be more teams that's still mathematically in the race. But no, they've got to finish up their conference schedule 2 weeks out and instead play the Citadel this week. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
So SMU is undefeated in the conference. Miami has 1 loss. Clemson has 1 loss, and they're in the clubhouse.
And everybody else is mathematically eliminated.
Okay, yes. So basically, Miami has to lose one other game, and then we would see a SMU Clemson championship game. Or there's a possibility, though remote, that SMU could lose 2 games, and we would see a Miami Clemson ACC championship game.
Right. But it's kind of disheartening. We're 2 weeks out for the season, an 8-game schedule, and only 3 teams have a mathematical chance. Not even like some long shot chance. No, it's mathematically impossible for the 4th place team to be in the ACC title game. I feel like since we're all only doing this for entertainment and value at this point, can we at least have some surprise? Can we have some talking points in these conferences? Can you at least give me some entertainment?
Yeah, and that's a good thing about the Big 12. The Big 12 doesn't get in the way of any of that. And the Big 10 doesn't generally, although they've picked up one of these West Coast teams, USC, that plays Notre Dame to finish their season. And that forces UCLA to have to do the same thing. So UCLA is going to be I thought of a few derogatory terms to use. I won't use just, the bottom of the rung, the last consideration for the conference, because they can't match up an odd number of teams. So if USC is playing Notre Dame, I don't know. I don't like having one of the teams playing Fresno State the last weekend of the season, and that being UCLA. I think if I was the Big Ten, I would kind of force something there, for some kind of scheduling change. The Big 12, they're in the right. They don't have any crazy out of conference situations that they deal with.
Right, and that's the one thing that the Big 12 does best, is because of their parity and their scheduling. It's the only part of the Big 12 that matters. Unfortunately, their conference is just so bad. Nobody cares about them. And when I say nobody cares about them, that means in general, because I know Talk is Pitt scolded me last time. So I have to make exclusions for like the 25 people that actually care about Big 12 football. And we'll go to the match for a conference that might not even get a single team in the college football playoffs, because their teams are just that pathetic and bad.
Well, I also think, Daryl, that I'm not necessarily apt to pat the Big 12 on the back as doing anything right. I just think that fell into place for them. Basically, they don't play out of conference games that matter. They don't have any relevant rivalries outside the conference. So it's almost like when they had retraction and Texas A&M and Missouri left, and they were pared down from 12 to 10 teams, and therefore they played the purest conference season of anyone by playing everyone. And I included, patted them on the back to say, you have the purest championship, but I also stated this was not intentional. You just fell into this because teams left programs left your conference. And then also, in terms of the realignment situation and the Pac-12 imploding and the Big 12 being saved, again, I don't know that was such a mastermind strategy of the Big 12, or that they did anything to safeguard their league. Their league just didn't have any programs that were good enough for anyone to want.
Well, they are the island of misfit toys, Mark. So are you telling me even the misfit toys, there's some toys out there that are so damaged and conglomerated in weird shapes that not even the Big 12 ones? Big 12 should be getting everybody they can get because they're not going to beat with quality, so they just need to get quantity. Go to 24, go to 28 teams. They should have game on every single day of the week because that's the only way they're going to be relevant going forward. They can't compete with anybody, including the ACC, in terms of quality because they got no good teams. So you might as well do the only thing else you can do and go quantity.
Well, we will soon find out in the college football playoff, but of course I tend to agree with you because I'm standing on my prediction that the Big 12 will not win a national championship in the next 10 years. Do we have any Big 12 fans in the chat, by the way? I would like to hear from some Big 12 fans. I like the Big 12. I'm just stating what I see.
Mark, how many playoff games do you think they would win in the next 10 years? But put the over-under at 3.5. Where would you be?
I was just about to say 3. So I guess I'm going under.
Just barely. I mean, I could realistically make an argument for 0. Because they're always going to have to, or unless something dramatic happens, they're going to have to play the number 2 team in the country every single year. Every single year. And they're going to get dog-walked almost every single year. Like, they're not even going to be competitive. They're not even going to be a turnover away from being a turnover away, Mark. That's how lopsided these games are.
I tend to agree with you, as I typically do. However, not to that extreme.
Well, I told you what the line was for BYU at Ohio State. 21 points, Mark.
I understand that. TCU was also a 14-point underdog against Michigan.
Yeah, that's fire. But there's a giant asterisk over Michigan over the 2021, 2022, 2023 season. So they cheated. And those games, we don't know how good that program was because they had influence that other teams didn't have. So I can't take any of those games into consideration when talking about what's going to happen going forward. That's a good question. I actually think Michigan State.
Oh, yeah.
Michigan State, because they've proven over the last 10 years. I mean, 2015, they went to the college football playoff. Now, I know they got drubbed, but they've shown they can do it. I believe in Jonathan Smith. He's a great head coach. They're already better than they were last year. They've got life in their program. I'd absolutely take Sparty over the entire Big 12.
I've not seen Kentucky play since, was the Ole Miss game before the Georgia game or after the Georgia game? Whichever. I saw both of those games. So give us a current scouting report on Kentucky. They're a 20.5-point underdog at Texas SEC football.
Well, Texas should win. They should roll. The only time Kentucky plays great is on the road and against top 10 teams. So I'm assuming we're going to get the absolute best version of Kentucky. Listen, Mark, I just want to play Ohio State, Oregon, every elite team next year on the road. That's all I want because we can't play at home. We can't play anybody good or bad in the SEC and beat them. I wouldn't be surprised at halftime if the game was like 14-13 because Texas has had a lot of bad starts. And I'm not completely sold on Texas being this elite world beater team. And I wonder if there's going to be some creep between them looking next week and just assuming this is a game where a check mark game, especially with their big rivalry for Texas A&M next week. But, Mark, the Texas has so much depth, and they've got such a better coach than Kentucky. I think Texas probably wins this game 35-21. Like, Kentucky just doesn't have the offensive firepower to score points. So If Kentucky's down 10 points at all during any portion of the game, it's over. Kentucky just doesn't have the players to score quickly or explosively. Now, on paper they do, but in practicality they don't. They don't have a quarterback that's good. Brock Vandagriff might not even be the starting quarterback. They had some random guy that I've never even heard of, Mark, playing the Murray State second half that looked decent. So he might play a little bit as well. But yeah, it's not going to be a pretty day. We're going to get beat by both UT teams this year.
It wasn't Gavin Wimsatt?
No, it wasn't Gavin Wimsatt. It was somebody else. Gavin Wimsatt's a terrible quarterback, Mark. He's not good. He's not accurate. He doesn't know how to throw. He can run the ball. He's basically like a worse version of Alex Orji.
All right, DeReal. Anything else?
How sad is it that the best game tomorrow is Ohio State, Indiana? I mean, I love college football. I love the sport, but man, we got to do something with the scheduling issue because tomorrow's game is just trying to get hyped up for the schedule, even looking for upsets outside of Texas A&M Auburn. There's not going to, I don't see any upsets that are even
I'm
possible.
optimistic about upsets.
Can you give me a few?
Minnesota, Penn State, I think, is a possibility. I also think Florida, Ole Miss is a possibility. You mentioned Texas A&M and Auburn, although 2.5 points. I don't know if that's much of an upset, but it is in terms of the standings. It's it would be a huge upset. You got a team that's got a clear path to the CFP versus a team that's basically Auburn's not beaten anyone with a pulse this year. They've been awful. So it's very, from a standing standpoint, a huge upset, but from a Vegas standpoint, not much of an upset. And then also, I don't think that Ohio State is going to be seriously challenged, but I've been wrong before and I will be wrong again. And so Indiana, they're only a 13-point dog. I think it's down to like 10 and a half. Ohio State's offensive line's beat up, and maybe the Indiana Hoosiers win over Ohio State for the first time since 1988.
Yeah, Mark, I'll take 49-14 Ohio State in that
49-14. I'm going 38-17.
That's fine. And you know what? But regardless of those outcomes we just predicted, Indiana out of the playoffs is what that would mean. Just completely out. 11-1 Big Ten team out of the playoffs. That would be so exciting.
Indiana 11-1. Okay, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. Unless Penn State opens up a avenue for them.
And then you got the 4 SEC teams, or with 5 if you include Texas. And you got Notre Dame, the ACC winner, and the G5.
Yeah.
And there's just one team that's going to be left out that shouldn't be, and then next year they're going to expand it to 14 because that's always the solution to these problems. Just keep adding until you eliminate all possible teams instead of saying, no, you don't, none of you all belong. But anyway, Mark, that's all I got for you. Good talking to you.
Thanks, DeReal. Scoring updates tonight here at the Voice of College Football. And keep in mind, we appreciate your contributions. So we have Jackson showing up. This guy's been a member for 15 months. You know what I intended on doing tonight? I intended on honoring all the fine folks out there that are members here at the Voice of College Football, both here on YouTube and on Patreon. We need to build that list, and we need to look at those fine folks. Thank you. If you are a member here at the Voice of College Football, thank you for that. Thank you for being a member. Jackson at this head of the line there, but everyone who's a member here at the Voice of College Football, you can be a member here at the Voice of College Football, and just when you sign up, you can see exactly what the benefits are right here on YouTube or again on Patreon, patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. So please be a member here at the Voice of College Football. But Jackson here is letting us know, of course, let's get the Voice of College Football to 100,000 subs, and let's get all the other channels to 10,000 subs. Let's freaking go. Thank you, Jackson. I'm right there with you, Jackson. 100,000. Let's get it. Let's get to 100,000 tonight. All we have to do is more than double our subscriber count that we've built up over the last 11 or 12 years, whatever it's been, in one night. There are channels out there that do get 50,000 subs in a day. Why can't we do that? Well, there's no reason we shouldn't get to 100,000 subs tonight. There are all sorts of we're like in the top. I got some kind of statistic from YouTube that sounds impressive. It sounds impressive. It's really not, because shoot, everybody I'm talking to basically is a YouTube channel. So we're in the top like 0.5% of YouTube channels, but that's really not that impressive when you think about it. But man, there are zillions of YouTube channels that have way more subscribers than us. So let's get to 100,000 subs. Maybe I'll run a marathon and we'll stay on, and I'll go on some kind of like hunger strike until we get to 100,000 subs. We should do that. See how many pity subs I could get by wasting away. And I could use wasting away. I need to lose about 12 pounds. That's my guesstimate. I could use to lose about 12 pounds. So the beginning of the hunger strike wouldn't be too impressive because, again, I could use the 12 pounds off. Yeah. Or really turned into fat. Maybe I could do a / hunger strike and exercise routine in front of the cameras, in front of all of you, embarrass myself, and try to get to 100,000 subs. Yeah. Okay. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who do we have here? We've got John here.
How you doing, Mark?
Hey, John. I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Just a couple things I wanted to touch on. The Indiana thing, I still believe they're a better team than Tennessee. Especially when it comes to consistency, I understand that Indiana's played a weaker schedule, but they've just been throttling everyone. And let's not forget,
Michigan?
everyone,
Michigan?
Well, yeah, except for Michigan, sorry. But let's not forget, everyone on ESPN is talking about how Colorado's this, great team now, and they're going to make the playoff, and they got everything in front of them. And Nebraska beat Colorado. And then what did Indiana do to Nebraska?
All true.
So I think, and when it comes to the, what do they call it? I guess I call it lobbying to the committee. I call it crybaby syndrome.
Yep.
What Kirby Smart is doing. If I recall right, after beating Kentucky, Kirby Smart went on national television talking about how they proved they were the best team in the nation, and then followed it up with a loss to Alabama. Granted, they came back in that game. So you were just on national television talking about how you were the best team in college football, which is fine. You're the head coach of the team. But now that you got 2 losses, you feel the need that you got to lobby with this committee. Why? Do you not feel like you're the best team anymore, or because you couldn't back up what you said weeks prior to losing? I just think if a 1-loss Big Ten team gets left out in favor of a 2-loss SEC team, I think it's a travesty for this whole playoff. Honestly, I do.
Well, I don't
You
disagree
only play
with you.
the schedule, and it's like Joe Klatt said on his show this week. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
When Indiana's schedule came out before the season started, nobody was talking about how easy it was. Nobody knew that Michigan was going to be as bad as they were, because they had Michigan on there. I'm talking about when the schedule came out.
Sure.
This was before Kalen
I
DeBoer
follow
left
you. I'm just trying to remember back to remember as to whether I went after Indiana's schedule.
Yeah, because
it's not Indiana's fault.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
That part of it's not their fault, but they are responsible for their non-conference schedule. And
yes, they are.
No one.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you on that. But like nobody knew, like at that point when it was released, Kalen DeBoer was still the head coach at Washington. Michigan came off a national title game. Nebraska was kind of highly thought of coming into this year. And even if they do get blown out by Ohio State, what's a worse loss? Getting beat by Ohio State or Alabama? Not to bring Alabama into this, but Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. Like, I only brought Alabama into it because these SEC schools, they seem to get the nod. I think Alabama's ranked way too high. I feel like Ole Miss should be the highest ranked now. Did Alabama beat Ole Miss, right?
No,
they
didn't play.
Okay. Ole Miss beat Georgia.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So why is it that? Can you help me understand why they look at Alabama and rank them ahead of Ole Miss?
Well,
is it because Alabama has to win over Georgia?
And I can kind of speak to this because I do these rankings myself every week. So it's more difficult than you think it is, or I'm not saying you specifically, but people think it is unless they do it themselves, because it does become very complicated because you've got a situation with those 4 teams in the SEC where Tennessee beat Alabama, Alabama beat Georgia, Georgia beat Tennessee, Ole Miss beat Georgia. You've got this round robin, so you cannot honor head-to-head wins. You can't.
Right.
So you have to look at their resume. Well, I can't sit here and organize all 4 teams' exact resumes, but we can try here. So Alabama beat Georgia. That's a really good win.
Yeah.
Alabama.
And I guess you could look at Alabama beat Georgia, who did beat Texas.
Yeah, let's not. Okay. Gotcha. I don't.
No, I'm saying, do you think the committee will give them credit?
Believe in the transitive property to that degree, because your first point about Indiana, then if we truly are going to go Nebraska, Colorado, Indiana, that whole deal that you laid out, then Indiana is going to beat Ohio State tomorrow by, let's see, they beat Nebraska by 49. Ohio State beat Nebraska by 4. They're going to beat Ohio State by 45 points tomorrow. So
no, I don't think that.
So I'm not saying that's invalid what you did. I'm just saying I don't think that's just the end of the discussion.
At that.
It's something to be brought up. Yes.
Yeah, I was asking if do you think the committee was looking at that when they were ranking Bama the second highest SEC, was that they beat Georgia, who Georgia beat Texas. Do you think the committee takes that in mind?
Sure, they do.
Okay.
Well, not maybe that directly, but they are saying Alabama beat Georgia. Well, how do you evaluate Georgia? Well, their most important win, their best game was beating Texas. So yes, that it's not necessarily done in the way that you just did it, but obviously when wins are ranked, we're also ranking that teams. When wins are ranked, we're ranking that the team that was beaten, their record and their schedule as well. So Alabama, again, we could sit here and comb through all of it. The resumes between Tennessee, Ole Miss, Georgia, and Alabama are pretty razor thin. Georgia's got the best out of conference win, beating Clemson by 31. Yeah. Alabama beat Wisconsin, who's a marginal 5-5 team, by 32 points on the road.
Was that close until towards the end of or towards the middle of the second half, and then Alabama kind of ran away with that?
Close.
Well, it was
3. I don't know.
Oh, is that what it was at halftime?
I don't know. It was 28-3 at one point.
Okay.
It wasn't. Wisconsin was marginally competitive for, I don't know, a quarter. It wasn't much of a game.
Okay.
It was 42-10. It was 28-3 at one point, et cetera, et cetera. I think the closest it was 7-3. Okay. So that's not a great win. This is one of the worst Wisconsin teams we've seen. However, it was on the road, and Alabama did take care of business. They didn't mess around. They played them better and beat them more soundly than Penn State did, for example. That game was 14-13 with like 5, 6, 7 minutes left. Georgia, beat Clemson. Georgia's going to have a game against a decent Georgia Tech team next week. They're 7-4. Then we got Ole Miss, who did nothing outside the conference. They might as well have played Indiana's, although they did play. They played Wake, which technically it's a group Power 5 game, but it doesn't really register.
Okay, well, I want to bring this up because I know it gets talked about all the time. You bring up the out of conference schedule. How much weight should be put? Like, how much should the committee look at that these SEC schools every year pretty much schedule a bye week with the second to the last week of the season by facing like the Citadel and can you think of another conference that does that?
Some ACC teams do it.
Oh, do they? Okay.
Florida State, Clemson.
But it seems like every year that Georgia, Alabama.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
So I do think that should get a look at about how that's pretty much a bye week.
A lot of people are in your corner on that. And I'm not saying that it's not a good point, but I want the point explained. Why does that matter?
Well, it matters because I think it matters is why these other teams are, playing conference games 2 weeks before the conference championship, 2-3 weeks before the conference championship. You got Georgia who can play their starters for the first quarter and then just hit them.
Sure.
So you're pretty much
they're not going to play Oregon or Ohio State in a conference championship game. They're playing against other teams. The SEC, the one thing that the SEC does is they make sure that everybody that's doing that is playing somebody else who's doing that the final weekend of the season.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't even realize that.
Look at it. Yes. So, for example, most seasons, Auburn plays a nobody the week before Alabama, and Alabama plays a nobody before the week of their game, and then they play each other. This year, if you notice, Auburn's playing Texas A&M, Alabama's playing Oklahoma. They make sure that they at least make that fair against each other. I get your point because of where it is in the season, but you still add up the entire schedule, and that just means that the SEC starts playing its conference games earlier.
Okay, yeah. I did want to address something in the chat. It said Davey something about because I brought up Vanderbilt earlier. He said Vanderbilt's a good team, and you know it. You weren't saying that before Vanderbilt beat your team. Like, come on. Nobody was saying Vanderbilt was a good team before Vanderbilt went and beat Alabama. But that's neither here or there. But I do want to ask you, because I did just come in like 20 minutes ago. Do you think Indiana should still get in with a loss?
Oh my goodness. I should be better prepared for that question. It's already been asked of me, but you got to give me the loss. What does this loss look like?
14 points.
Okay, they lose by, and we're talking about it's not because you could have a really close game that ends up at 14, or you could have a blowout that ends up at 14. So it's just legitimate, like Ohio State
game, and Ohio State pulls away at the end.
Okay, it's a good game, and then Ohio State wins 35-21. Okay, so I would give Indiana a lot of credit for that game. I would think they're playing one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country on the road, and they were competitive. But I tell you, their schedule is still awful.
Yeah. But you look at Texas, but I know a lot of Joe Clapp brought it up too, and I'm sorry to keep bringing them up, but he brought up Texas's schedule outside of Georgia, and look where they're ranked was a loss to Georgia.
Okay, so there's a good starting point. You bring up a good point. So if we're going to compare Texas and Indiana, then Indiana's game against Ohio State would be exactly the same as Texas's game against Georgia. So we could almost cancel those out.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
Although Texas did play at home.
Yeah.
Indiana's going on the road. But let's say they're similar losses. Okay. Then if we take it from there, Indiana's best win is going to be Washington, who's most likely going to lose to Oregon next week to finish 6-6. Michigan's going to be 6-6.
What is Nebraska?
Nebraska's 5-5 right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of stopped keeping track of them.
They
So
got Wisconsin and Iowa. They're probably going to go 6-6 at best. So let's say Indiana has 3 6-6 wins. That's going to be as good as that gets. I can't think of anybody else, that's going to come anywhere close to. Well, I guess Michigan State, they should have won tonight. I know they're up a touchdown. That gets them to 5-6. Anyway, we're squabbling over a bunch of 6-6, 5-7 teams. So Indiana is going to have a run of those.
Yeah.
Kind of wins. Well, Texas is going to have Vanderbilt, who's probably going to finish 7-5. They're 6-4 right now, I believe. Somebody check me on that. They might be 5-5. They're either 6-4 or 5-5. I think they're 6-4. They got Tennessee next week. I don't know who they play before that. I think they've got an easy game. I don't know. Anyway, Vandy's going to be 6-6 or 7-5. Texas, Oklahoma's probably going to go 5-7.
Yeah,
they're pretty bad.
They play Texas A&M too, right?
Texas, yeah. So if
what happens if A&M beats Texas?
Well, yeah, that's going to send them to 2 losses.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that schedule. You and the Joe Klatt show are my 2 favorite college football shows to watch on here.
Well, Joe Klatt is amazing. He's great, and obviously, I've got all the respect in the world for him. So I appreciate you putting me in that same sentence.
Oh, I hardly ever miss one of your shows.
Well, I appreciate it.
That because I didn't realize Texas's schedule outside of that Georgia was not that strong.
No. I posted a video, John, and this was before anybody played one game. And I said, look at what the SEC has done to Oklahoma and Texas here. They brought 2 teams in from the Big 12. And listen to this. Texas was given a schedule that the composite record of the teams that Texas played this season won 35% of their games last year in the SEC. And I said, Oklahoma's schedule given to them, those teams won 65% of their games in the SEC. There's no comparison. And I did an order where I ordered the difficulty of the teams on Texas's conference schedule versus Oklahoma. And after Georgia, and I think this still holds true now that we're into the season, Texas's second hardest game, their second most difficult game, is Texas A&M in the conference.
Yeah.
You could argue that would be Oklahoma's second easiest game as things played out going into the season. That's how much tougher Oklahoma's schedule is than Tech. I don't know what the SEC is doing, but they botched scheduling again. But we've got Texas up here. Let's see real quick.
I mean, let's call a spade a spade. They knew what they were doing. They knew Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Texas was going to, they're the new darlings. They wanted them to get in the playoff. They really don't care about Oklahoma. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Texas will have, it's interesting you bring up Texas and Indiana because obviously they're going to have one win. Texas beat Michigan. Indiana beat Michigan. Now, Texas had a far more dominant win against Michigan. Other than that, their best win is going to be Vanderbilt. And then probably Florida's about the same. Florida's going to be 6-6. They're probably going to lose to Ole Miss tomorrow. And then they're going to beat Florida State because they're so pathetic. They're going to go 6-6. And Arkansas is probably going to be 6-6. They got Louisiana Tech tomorrow. Then they're going to lose to Missouri. Probably. They'll be 6-6. And it comes down to Texas A&M. If Texas beats Texas A&M, then they will have a better resume than Indiana. If they lose to Texas A&M, then it's basically a toss-up.
Well, let me propose this to you real quick. Texas A&M beats Texas. Does A&M jump over Tennessee?
If Texas A&M beats Texas, assuming Texas A&M wins at Auburn tomorrow, oh yes, they jump Tennessee because they will also be in the SEC championship game.
Yeah. And one thing that got brought up the other day was on the Pat McAfee show is, do you punish a team, say Ohio State goes to the Big Ten title game?
Yep.
Because everyone's talking about how the 5 seed is the best seed to be in the playoffs.
Yes.
Because you host the playoff and you play the 4th best conference champion.
Absolutely.
If Ohio State goes to the Big Ten title game, loses to Oregon, because Oregon's already locked in, right? Into the Big Ten title game?
Yes.
Loses to Oregon again. Do you think Ohio State will get punished for having that second loss and an extra game and get dropped behind teams that didn't play in a conference championship game with 2 losses?
Well, here's the deal, John.
Or a team with 1 loss like Penn State.
Yes. So here's the deal, John. As soon as this format was announced, I went through, I produced videos wherever they are now. They're on YouTube. And I went through
to go watch them.
Every season of the playoff era. And I even went back before the playoff era because it was so interesting to me. But the playoff era of 10 years is the most valid because there was a playoff committee. Obviously, you've got to go to the AP rankings before that. And if it's fascinating that there are tons of teams during the 10-year playoff that had a ranking that placed them safely in the playoffs. Let's say number 9, number 10, something in that range before the conference championship game. Then they lost the conference championship game and the committee dropped them to 14, 15, somewhere like that. So if the committee takes the same approach, which if they're doing their job, they're supposed to be consistent, they will be penalizing these teams. Now, we don't know in hindsight if the committee would have done that to those teams because all it meant was a ranking then. It didn't mean you're in the playoff or you're out of the playoff.
Yeah, or seeding.
There wasn't that weight given to it, but they should have been doing their due diligence. So they should be bringing the same philosophy. So I can't answer that question. Now, what do I think is fair? I don't think either extreme is fair because on one extreme, you just say, hey, you made the conference championship game. You shouldn't get penalized for getting blown out by Oregon or Georgia because you had to play an extra game. So you shouldn't get penalized by that. But at the same time, we are rewarding the team that won the conference championship game. So we are evaluating that performance. So it's only fair. It's another data point to judge and evaluate that team. Like, I understand the mindset and the argument that we shouldn't hold that against those teams. I totally get that argument.
Well, I brought up Penn State because Ohio State has that head-to-head against Penn State.
Oh, I don't think as long as Ohio State doesn't lose, well, they can't lose 3 games. But
yeah,
as long as they've got 2 losses, even if they've got 1 loss more than Penn State, they should not be ranked below Penn State.
Yeah. And then one more thing before I go, and I appreciate you letting me stay on this long.
Sure.
Do you think, well, actually 2 more things, sorry. Do you think the committee will ever, this year, do you think we have any chance of seeing an SEC versus SEC matchup in the first round of the playoffs?
Well, if they're going to allow all these teams to get into the playoff, they're not going to be able to avoid it, but they'll do their best to avoid it.
Because right now we don't have any, right? I don't think we have any SEC versus SEC matchups in the playoffs. Because it's what? Bama, Notre Dame, Ohio State. Who do they got first round right now?
Well, it would be Ohio State and Boise State.
Well, Boise's
I
the
don't
number
have
4
it
team, aren't
memorized.
they?
Pardon me?
I think Boise's ranked. Boise has a bye week right now.
Oh, because they would be ranked ahead of
BYU.
BYU.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So it's Ohio. I think it's Ohio State, BYU,
That's right.
and then I know it's Bama, Notre Dame, Indiana, Ole Miss, and then Georgia. I'm missing a team.
Yeah, I don't have
Penn State, Georgia, Penn State. Sorry.
Okay, Georgia, Penn State.
Yeah, somebody just put it in the chat. Thank you, Jackson. But yeah, I want to see these first round matchups. My neighbor thinks I'm crazy, but I said I'm taking Notre Dame at home against Alabama. But that's just how I feel. I would love to see a Penn State Georgia game.
Well, that's how you feel, John, but I think you would admit that you're biased in the situation.
What do you mean?
Well, you want the Big Ten teams to win, and you want the Northern teams to win.
No, I would love to see Penn State and Georgia. I think Georgia would win the game, but I think I don't know. I think that's a marquee matchup in the first round of the playoff. I want to see good matchups. I don't want to see who did Liberty play last? Oregon. I don't want to see Liberty, Oregon again.
Sure.
That's what I'm a little worried about getting this Power 5 school in here. Like BYU, like how many? They're like a smaller Miami, Florida this year. They kept skating by with these late victories, and then it finally caught up to them. So I'm a little worried about how big of a blowout that would be playing in Columbus against the Buckeyes in the first year of a 12-team playoff. But I mean, I understand why they did it, though. Just one more thing, I wanted to ask you what you thought about people complaining about how they're doing it, where it's the 4 champions are the bye, and then the Power 5 or the Group of 5 school getting an automatic bid as well. So the BYUs. Do you like that the BYU that they got that spot for like the BYU schools?
You mean the Group of 5?
Yeah, the Group of 5.
BYU's in the Power 5.
Oh yeah, they're Big 12. I'm sorry.
But you're talking about Boise State or whoever it ends up being.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say it this way, that the same people that seem to be okay with us having a committee select all these teams, well, that's the format that they were given. And if they truly believe that a Group of 5 champion is that much better than a Power 5 champion, then that's the system under which we live. I don't think it's a perfect system. I think it's fine. It's not bad. It's a huge improvement over having 4 teams make the playoffs out of 5 conferences.
Oh, absolutely. I do too. But I'm just honestly, I'm hoping for chaos. Obviously, I don't want it to involve Ohio State, but like a Texas A&M beating Texas, or what the BYU, Boise State. Who's the third team right there? They're all ranked together.
SMU.
Those 3 teams. Obviously, Boise State has nothing to do with SMU and BYU, but I just want to see chaos. I want to see what this thing comes down to.
I do too. Root for Army tomorrow.
Oh, well.
Okay. John, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks for the call. I'm going to keep it moving here, but thank you so much for calling. Call back anytime.
All right. Bye.
All right, we keep it going here at the Voice of College Football, and this is the College Football Show and our call-in show post-game on a Friday night, and it's always a good show when we got Leanne Herring joining us, of course, and we've got the Ole Miss Show every Wednesday, folks, at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's with Leanne, Ruby, and myself every Wednesday. But Leanne, checking out some high school football, Texas high school football playoffs tonight. Let me get this straight. Atascocita. Did I say that right?
Say it right, but it is Atascocita. It took me a couple times. I even being Atascocita, yeah, that's right.
Taking
It's one
on
of those phrases. Even someone had to correct me, because I remember the first time I came into town, and we were talking about football, and one of the gentlemen correctly, he's like, "Hun, it's Atascocita." I said, I should have figured it out, but yes, now
I
I've
got
always
it. You
come
helped
back
me
to
out on that one. Atascocita is
it's okay.
playing Pearland, and we got 3 Ole Miss targets from the 26 and 27 classes playing tonight.
Yeah, no, it was a great showing, man. What a close match. I mean, as we get deeper, I believe this is already second, third round. This is the bye district, and the bye district. I can't keep up with them. But again, as we get closer, you're going to see more. These are two teams that historically have been our high-powered offenses. These are two teams, Atascocita, we've all talked about Carde Mack, the running back turned quarterback that will collegiately, everyone's recruiting him as a running back, but right now he's doing just a fine job at quarterback for Atascocita. Now, I didn't get to see much of our other 2 targets from Pearland and from, Blaylock, who's of course the younger brother of the star running back Tory Blaylock, and has NFL genes. Brothers are playing at other universities. His dad, ex NFL veteran, so he's a young kid that we're going to be definitely looking at. But right here, perfect. Carde Mack once again steal the show. Now, tonight's performance against Atascocita, final score 28-17. They just barely edged out Pearland. It was a tough match. Talk about when they say defense which wins championships. Like I said, these are 2 offenses in Texas that are known notoriously for putting up big numbers. The last 3 games, Pearland had put 23 points on every opponent. That did not happen tonight. It was a defensive battle. Even Carde Mack had he had a good night, but it wasn't his typical let's run in for touchdowns, with nobody's business. But again, a great showing by Atascocita, edging out. I think one of the last key drives that I tweeted out and had a little bit of film on was, I think, the most pivotal drive and kind of the last nail in the coffin for Atascocita closing out this game and moving on to the third round in their division. Was Carde Mack is one of those kids that he knows how to play an up-tempo offense. I think it's obviously because of his running back background. If he's not taking it in with the quarterback keep, I tell you, he's like a shapeshifter, reminds me of Barry Shipp. But he is really meticulous in being able to turn off that switch and easily be able to slow the pace down. And that's really what he did in the last 2 minutes of that game. A long, calculated, well-constructed drive to eat the clock, to leave Pearland on their toes with just 2 minutes. And then right as you go into the end zone, that was pretty much the deal. Gave Pearland enough time to come back. But there was an INT by Atascocita defense. Like I said, the defense tonight for both these teams really, really kept it tight. I was talking to some of the regulars on the sidelines from both teams, and they said that they were really surprised that this was such a closer matchup because, again, these are 2 high-powered offenses that are known for putting in numbers, but not tonight because they're close to the playoffs. But like I said, another great showing by Carde Mack. I mean, the Rebels are going after him, but we're also hearing that Texas A&M is of course trying to keep him close to home. College Station not too far up the road. And like I said, anybody who sees this kid, whether you see him on film or whether you see him on person, he's just really a phenomenal player because, like I said, he doesn't fit the stereotypical quarterback that you see making a run and this kind of thing. Like I said, he's a small guy, running back frame, but I mean, he's carried this team on his shoulders, and it's really exciting to see that even in this day and age, especially when it comes to high school recruiting, that there's so much faith by big programs, SEC programs, Big Ten programs that really see a lot of potential and are still willing to recruit this kid despite him playing quarterback. I mean, like I said, it just goes to testament to show really how athletic he is. And like I said, today, it wasn't their best showing, their strongest showing. He didn't go out there and do 3 or 4 touchdowns, but again, he stood on business. He finished, and it's really exciting to see. And his recruitment. And I really do hope that Ole Miss will stay steadfast with him because, like I said, any team who gets this kid at the running back position, I mean, that, like I said, that's what he's going to be recruited as. He's going to be a game changer. I mean, what he does week in and week out is just something short of phenomenal. Like I said, he's not supposed to be playing quarterback at a program like this. So again, it speaks for his athleticism. it speaks for how much faith that the coaches and big power programs see in him. Because like I said, most kids that play an alternate position, they don't get recruited like this kid did. So like I said, another exciting night. Atascocita doesn't put up a lot of points. They didn't play their cleanest game. They did have a lot of mistakes and errors. So I'm assuming that this weekend will go into a lot of cleanup. But again, they survived for a third round. The next round in Carde Mac keeps rolling on.
Leanne Herring is our co-host on the Ole Miss Show every week right here at the Voice of College Football. And so please check us out on the Ole Miss Show every Wednesday. And Leanne and myself are going to start a recruiting show. So stick around for some details on that. We'll get you locked in on when that's going to be starting next week. But definitely we will see you all on National Signing Day, which is going to be the week after next on Wednesday. National Signing Day moved up from mid-December to December 4th. So how deep are they in the Texas high school playoffs right now?
I believe this is the second round. So this is the second round with all the divisions. Of course, most of them are playing neutral sites. So after this one, we'll go into the third week. So last week was by district. Now it's area. And then, so I believe they're about 3 games out from the state championship. So we still have a little bit of a ways, but like I said, the field, I guess, starts with over 130 teams, and then each week it's cut down. So, you're talking a lot of talent, a lot of neutral fields, to kind of shift gears and everything, because I know we're kind of previewing, our recruiting show that we're coming in. And of course, I'm sure TJ was excited yesterday. I know they talked about it on the Michigan show. On a national level of recruiting, you can't help but talk about the 2 big flips at the quarterback position for the 2025 class in Michigan, being able to flip Bryce Underwood from LSU, obviously 5-star quarterback. That's a huge, huge, huge win for Michigan on so many levels. And it also has people down in Baton Rouge saying, is Brian Kelly on the hot seat? Because he received quite a lot of criticism. And it added definitely more fuel to the fire, losing Bryce Underwood of all places to Michigan. And then, like I said, it's really ironic, but it's not surprising because, like I said, getting so close to December, these last games we talk about, heading into the playoffs, these conference championships, they really do matter a lot to these recruits. So, one team's, folly is another team's treasure. And, on the opposite end, Julian Lewis, 2026 kid that ends up reclassifying, which we're seeing a lot of kids do right now. We're seeing a lot of the 2026 recruits move up to the class of 2025. That happened with Austin Simmons. He was really, really talented kid, really intelligent kid academically, was another, and we were lucky when we got him in that cycle. But I think this year is another cycle where we're seeing a lot of kids reclassify. And, Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, being able to get a flip of Julian Lewis, another 5-star quarterback, there was a lot of talk, of course, with his son getting ready to leave for the NFL. Is Coach Prime going to follow him? But, his press conference said he used the kickstand reference. He goes, I'm good. I'm relaxing. Don't be talking like that with my AD in here. But again, it's very interesting to see the different way that these programs recruit, because Deion Sanders, is not a person who goes out there and goes and gets talent the same way that most coaches do. Most players will come to him, and there's a lot of interesting things. Same thing with Michigan, a lot of private recruiting, private meetings, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to see in the tail end how many more big commitments we're going to have. And I think we're going to still see a lot of flips. But like I said, the irony in having 2 5-star quarterbacks, flip from, USC and then from LSU. It just goes to show the turntables. And like I said, and we were talking about on the show, and Ruby was talking, not until the check clears, not until, they put pen to paper. So it's going to be an interesting couple of days, weeks leading up to December 4th and then the portal reopening. But again, of course, on the national recruiting, you can't help but think, is Brian Kelly in trouble because his recruits are leaving? Similar to what we saw at Texas A&M. It's not quite at that point, that mass exodus that we saw with one of probably the best classes that Texas A&M could have ever put together, and probably one of the best recruiting classes in the country. And you saw how quickly when things go sour, how all those kids left, and LSU could be heading that way. So it's really interesting to see the turn the turn of events that's going to happen in the next couple weeks, like I said, because like these kids have been solid with these programs, but it just goes to show, when things start changing, the water starts to shake, that a lot of these kids are looking for a different opportunity.
I know it's a little early possibly to ask you this, but I will anyway. Do you have any ideas what your plans are next weekend? Any games in particular that you're targeting, or any recruits in particular?
Well, I'm going to wait to see how the schedule kind of finishes out this week and see kind of where we're going.
Sure.
To see as far as Texas, we got a lot of Georgia kids. I would like to make it out of Georgia. We had some of our commits, Hayden Bradley out of Beaufort. They're playing another, Georgia run out there. Beaufort, a highly touted program, of course. They won their game big today, so they're heading on to the next regional. Another school I always am very loyal to and has a lot of great young talent out in Milton, Georgia. Of course, another big win for them. So I'm hoping maybe to get out to Georgia soon. But like I said, kind of going to see how this weekend shapes out. And what happens in Gainesville too will be a huge storyline in how our recruitment will shift. It will either help or hinder us in a little way. Even though we're on the road, people don't realize that these games do have an impact on these recruits. I mean, we see it, like I said, when you have 2 5-stars who have been committed to a program for a long time, but then, turn of events, it can really, really change a lot of things. So, like I said, it's going to be an interesting couple weeks. It definitely will keep on our toes and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, recruiting never finishes. It's really exciting. Like I said, it's always exciting to see playoff time. And get to see these young guys and also find a lot of young kids, because there was a couple guys there tonight that I'm going to go back and watch film because, they're not the names, like I said, that you go to see, but when you see them play and you see them translate, they really do catch your eye. So that's the great thing about being in a playoff run. You see a lot of kids that you wouldn't normally see, or the kids that are unranked, and all that kind of stuff that you can build your roster on. So that's another thing too, heading into this offseason. How will Lane Kiffin approach building his roster? And I think a lot of teams are looking in that direction. Are we going to build it with high school recruits, or are we going to build it with portal recruits? Because I think now with NIL not being completely, figured out, I think that programs have a better gauge of how they're going to use their NIL, but at the same time, you still got to build a roster. And I think I said it from the jump, what Lane Kiffin's done here in Oxford over his time here has really, shifted more to an NFL approach, running his style, running his team, running his organization like you would in the NFL. So, how are we going to approach this offseason, as far as the Rebels? But a lot of other programs don't have that luxury. So, with whether it's their NIL money, or also, what kind of guys they're going to attract. Because like we see, there's that, with that portal opening here soon, it really does hurt a lot of the high school recruiting. I talk to a lot of high school coaches, and you see a lot of these kids that are extremely talented, and I'm talking 4-star, 5-star kids, and also some really talented 3-star kids. They have a struggle. They almost have to work twice as hard just to get the attention, because a lot of times what we see and what we're going to see when the portal opens is players and coaches, especially like Lane Kiffin. It's not that they don't want to go build on young talent. We've seen Ole Miss bring a great balance of young talent high school kids. But at the end of the day, when you're trying to fill an immediate void and trying to make sure that you can translate and cross over to your next season or in your off season, a lot of the times these portal guys are going to win because they already have adjusted to college life. They've already had playing time. So it'll be really interesting to see how much, Lane Kiffin will continue to keep his portal prowess as a portal king. But, is he going to shift more to trying to find high school kids? Is he going to try to stay and find a lot more in-state talent? But it'll be really interesting, like I said, to see, where the high school recruiting will go from here, because we see it now with the age of NIL. A lot of programs, are building on high school rosters. I mean, I brought it up about Clemson, how, Dabo Sweeney is the only school aside from the, service schools that still doesn't want to bite the bullet and go to the portal. It makes you think how long the longevity that Clemson's going to have not being able to do that, because I think that at some point there's going to be a breaking point. As great a coach as Dabo Sweeney is, Clemson hasn't had the success that I think is expected there. So when do you bite the bullet? When are boosters are going to be involved? And when is there going to be a push that, they might have to go in that direction?
Leanne hosts our Ole Miss show each and every Wednesday, along with myself and Ruby Dreher. So we've got Ole Miss Live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And again, Leanne and I are launching a recruiting show that is going to get cranked up next week. So stay tuned for more specifics and details on that. Leanne, great to see you. Thank you so much for checking in tonight. And
Thanks for having me.
have a great football weekend, and we'll see you soon.
And we will do post game tomorrow. So
That's right.
yeah, early
Post
kickoff
game tomorrow. Good reminder
post-game.
for me.
Yes, post game tomorrow. Don't forget to tune in. Early kickoff from Gainesville. So we will hear you. Hopefully, we'll be talking about an Ole Miss victory tomorrow. So we will see you post game. Hotty
Do we
toddy.
have a noon Eastern time game?
Yes, we do. We have. I'm pretty sure it's
Okay.
it's a noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central.
All right.
So you're in the future. I'm in the past. But yes, no, we have that early kickoff.
Thank you for the reminder.
Tomorrow will be the reminder. Yeah, I know it's late. We're all trying to get into that settle, but anyway, excited to be talking recruiting. I'll keep you guys updated, and we will see you tomorrow on the post game.
Thanks, Leanne. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Just another reminder of something else I need to do here is do Ole Miss post game tomorrow. All right. Add that to the list. Ole Miss and Florida post game right here at the Voice of College Football with yours truly. So we'll be all over it tomorrow as always. So let's see at noon. I'm definitely watching Ole Miss in Florida. Yes. Didn't expect that. Forgot about that. But yes, Ole Miss and Florida, I will be watching that game along with that Ohio State Indiana game, I guess. We'll go with that as well. All right. Let's keep it rolling. Let's finish out the calls here. We got our buddy Michael on the line. Michael, what's up?
I am sick to my stomach. I'm going to have nightmares for a week, sir.
Your team lost by a touchdown, correct?
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Jamal Edgerton losing his balance and losing the ball, we might still be playing football right now.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, because there was no one within 20 yards of him. But you know
right.
what?
I'll have to
You
look
know what
at
the
that.
saying? Oh, go ahead, Mark. Sorry about that.
Well, I'm just saying I'll have to check that out.
All right. You know the saying that goes on the Morton Salt Box, when it rains, it pours?
Yes.
That's Purdue football for 2024
Elvis
for
song
you.
from 1962. Go ahead.
That's Purdue football for you this year.
Well, it's been raining nonstop. Now, it's for Purdue. It's not when it rains, it really pours. It's always raining, therefore it's always pouring.
Yeah, true. Anyway, man, I don't know what happened, man. These first halves and stuff like that, man. If they can just play second halves of football games, sometimes, with the exception of maybe of a couple of games and stuff like that, I would say Purdue maybe be 3-8 right now instead of 1-10, maybe.
Well, it's pretty bad when you're stretching a number of scenarios to get your team to 3-8.
They was down 24-3 against Illinois, and they lose that in overtime, 50-49.
Yep.
If that wouldn't have happened, but you can't say about that though. I don't know, man. It's just like I don't even know, man. I mean, I'm glad they only got one game, and I wouldn't be surprised if IU put 60 up. But it could be worse if IU, depends on what happens tomorrow with IU. If they get beat like Notre Dame did, they could easily put 70 on Purdue next week. But who knows about that? We'll see that. But no. Another thing I'm trying to figure out is where has Purdue's running game gone this year? From the times you've seen Purdue.
Well, the times I've seen Purdue would be against Ohio State.
Notre Dame.
That's the only time I've watched Purdue.
No, okay. I didn't know if you
I wanted to watch the Notre Dame game, and I remember that as soon as I got done watching whatever the noon games were, it was already 800-0. So there was no reason to watch that game. So anyway, I have not watched Purdue play. And actually, the first couple drives of the game, as you remember, against Ohio State, they actually did run the ball before they were shut down. But I don't know what to tell you about your who's playing good football on that Purdue team on either side of the ball? Which I know that they've got good players. I'm not saying that. What unit on that team is playing well?
Well, my honest opinion, special teams.
Okay.
But you got good players and stuff like that on both sides of the ball. But it's just like the old line. I'm just trying to figure out what happened from last year to this year.
What do you mean? They sucked last year too.
Well, they was 4-8, but at least they was more competitive last year than they were this year.
They were what in the Big Ten? 2-7.
2-6, I think.
Well, they
I
played
don't know.
9 games.
I don't know. But anyways, I don't know, Mark. I'm just like, but no, it's like I am so bit. Actually, I'm waiting until noon tomorrow myself just to see how it's gonna go with and stuff like that. But we were talking about it in the chat and stuff like that, though. And you said there's no way Ohio State can lose 3.
What? I said what?
You said something about Ohio State won't lose 3 games?
No.
Or what was it you said?
That's not what I said. I was being given a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to say about them losing 3 games, but the scenario is about them making the playoff. They can't make the playoff and lose 3 games.
Okay. Now, what happens if an SEC team with 3 losses makes it?
What do you mean?
Or
What
you
happens?
think that's the same scenario? A 3-loss SEC team won't make it either.
Okay. For Ohio State to lose 3 games at this point, they have to lose their last 2 games of the season.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Correct. Otherwise, somebody else is going to the Big Ten championship game.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be 9-3, having lost their last 2 games of the season to Indiana
And Michigan.
and I guess what would be a 7-5 Michigan team if they beat Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
What's our 3-loss scenario in the SEC? I guess
Bama loses to Auburn.
Bama loses to Auburn.
Georgia loses to Georgia Tech.
Well, I know also there are
sorry.
all sorts of teams that can lose that are currently in the playoff in the SEC, but I'm talking about which team would lose and still maintain a playoff spot. If Bama loses to Auburn, I don't think they're going to the playoff.
Okay.
I don't think so. I would be rather upset about it and be pounding my fist and going crazy if Alabama loses to Auburn and Vandy and makes the playoffs at 9-3, unless there's complete chaos elsewhere.
Yeah. So what are you going to try to catch that Arizona State BYU game tomorrow also?
Yes. As I was just reminded by Leanne when she was on here, I totally forgot that I'm responsible for Florida and Ole Miss post game tomorrow. So that means I'm going to watch that game at noon Eastern, along with Indiana and Ohio State. We'll do our post game. And yes, I want to watch BYU and Arizona State. We'll put the schedule up here.
Where's the game at? Is it in Tempe or is it in?
It's in Tempe.
Okay.
And yeah, I am very interested in watching that game because I have not seen Arizona State play this year, except I watched some of the Mississippi State game. So at noon, I'm actually curious about the SMU Virginia game. I do think that Virginia could give SMU a game.
Okay. I gotta ask you this because I'm not sure. If Virginia wins, are they bowl eligible?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure. So.
And then here we go at 3:30 with your game. 3:30. I want to see Penn State play Minnesota too. So I'm going to be watching Penn State, Minnesota, and BYU, Arizona State at 3:30. Those are my 2 games. If one of them goes bad and becomes a rout, then I'm going to the Colorado-Kansas game. And actually, even though neither Wisconsin or Nebraska are any good, I'm just naturally
Northwestern Michigan.
I'm just kind of naturally bent. It's just in my genes, I guess, to want to see those kind of teams play.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my plan for 3:30.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, sir. I'm gonna go drown my sorrows in my Pepsi.
Well, I'm sorry, Michael, that your team played a close game again here and couldn't get it done because I didn't even watch the game. I know I told you that I was going to watch the game, and
No, you said you wouldn't even bother watching. I told you don't even bother watching the
you
game.
told me not to bother, and I said, well, it's a Big Ten game. I'm going to watch, but I just got involved with other things, and I thought, you know what? It was like 17-3. I did see Michigan State punch it in to make it 17-3 when one of your defensive tackles did a really stupid thing and pushed the guy after the whistle.
Yeah.
And gave Michigan State an automatic first down, and I thought, well, this is 17-3. And then I got on here just a couple minutes left in the third quarter. So, yeah, maybe I'll go back and watch some of it.
No, not bad. All right, sir. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night.
Thanks, Michael.
All right. Catch you tomorrow night, man. See ya.
Sounds good. All right. Let's keep it rolling. We've got Tom stopping by to talk some college football with us. Hey, Tom.
Good to see you, Mark.
Good to see you, too. What's going on?
We're going to hammer on Ohio State tonight.
Oh, boy.
How's that?
All right. Look out.
You're a higher Ohio State fan.
I'm going to
root for Indiana tomorrow. Is that okay?
I'm not a fan of anyone. Go ahead.
Can I root for Indiana tomorrow?
You can root for whoever you'd like.
If I'm a college fan, I want Indiana to win, right?
Oh, if you're just
College
a fan out there, absolutely
Yeah,
you want Indiana to win.
I want Indiana to win.
Yeah, if you're like if you're a Stanford fan, a Kansas State fan, a Florida State fan, anybody, well, those people root against Ohio State anyway, but especially tomorrow, yes.
Yeah, and Mark, I'll tell you that I hated Ohio State a lot more until I started watching you.
Oh, you hated them a lot more and then you backed off a little bit?
I hated them a lot more before I started listening to you. I don't hate Ohio State so much anymore. I hate Penn State. If you're an Iowa fan, you got to hate Penn State. So
I never quite understood that.
By 10 tomorrow.
I never quite totally understood that. I know Corey's explained that a little bit for us about the whole James Franklin.
They got a bunch of trolls. They're terrible, right? Anyway, and he's overrated. But anyway, let's say Indiana wins by 10 tomorrow.
Yep.
Right? So where does that leave Ohio State?
They probably shouldn't make the playoff.
That's what I'm afraid of. Best wins against Penn State. Right?
Yes. Although we're talking about it. Okay. We're talking about a situation where Indiana people are trying to put them into a playoff, and their best win would be Washington.
You're right. No, their best win would be Ohio State, wouldn't it? If they win by 10.
I'm saying if Indiana loses to Ohio State, there are people out there that want to put Indiana in the playoff, and their best win would be Washington, who's going to be 6-6.
I'm not here to bail Indiana out if they lose. They got to win, right? It's their playoff game, right?
If they lose, they're 11-1. If they lose by a field goal, you don't think they should be in the playoff?
I'm not really here to argue that. That I'll leave that up to the committee.
Okay.
We
leave too much up to the committee.
You're right. They probably deserve just as much chance as BYU being in the playoffs. You know what I mean?
Dude, a lot more.
Yeah, in comparison,
Indiana's game control comparison to BYU is a blowout.
Yeah, right. But that's a comparison. You know what I mean? BYU may get in. However, that conference shakes out.
They're going to have to win the conference.
But but I was looking at Ohio State's best wins Penn State. They have some of the same problems that teams in the SEC have, right? Texas A&M, as far as quality wins.
Yeah. I think about everyone across the country has that issue.
Yeah,
How many teams
a lot
really
of
have
teams
that
had
many
one good
quality
win.
wins?
Yeah, they got one.
Give me a team and we'll count up their quality wins.
Right.
Few
Tennessee.
teams have quality wins.
Yeah. A lot of them have one, but after Penn State, Ohio State doesn't have. Obviously, if they do beat Indiana, they have two, right? And they're in, right? So what if Ohio State beats Indiana and gets beat by Michigan? They still in?
Probably not.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. Michigan's 5-5 right now. They ain't no better than Iowa, right?
No. They're
Oh.
probably not as good.
And Corey wants to dog on Iowa that they're so damn bad.
Well, they should have done better against this schedule.
Yeah.
They lost to Michigan State and UCLA.
Yeah. Well, Mark, what's the problem with the team now? It's
I
not
don't
the
know what's
offense,
wrong with
is it?
Iowa. Their offense is so much better than it's been the last 5 years. I can't believe that
Exactly.
they're not any better.
The Michigan game, what beat them? It was the defense. How many field goals did they give up?
Yeah, about 18.
That's not normal for Iowa, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Gave up 32 points.
Yeah. Let them score a field goal every time. Only punted once, twice? Once in the game, I think.
Yeah.
UCLA, they punted twice. But
That was something I wanted to bring up with Corey this week, but we ran out of time. I wanted him to evaluate the defense and how much worse the defense is, because he thought, and I thought too, it was going to be a great defense. And they're not.
yeah, Corey's just looking to too much women's basketball.
Well, that's his number one sport now.
No, and I have no idea what I will do in the next 2 weeks, right? Probably split it. Wouldn't that be? That's kind of the odds, right? Go one
Those
and
are
one.
the odds, yeah. I would bet that they're
Yeah.
going to win both games.
Yeah. But quarterback deal sounds like maybe it's going to be the third stringer in there. Maybe not McNair.
Yeah, could be.
So that, but, so Mark, before I go, I watch the show all the time and everything, but some of the things that I took out of college football this year that I enjoy as a college football fan, Arizona State. Coach, they got beat by Utah last year, 55-3. Beat them this year. The other team is Vanderbilt. I like to see that being competitive. I like to see Iowa State being decent. I like those stories. It kind of brings us back to college football. It's not all about Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama. You know what I mean? And it brings some reality back to things. And so I do enjoy. And Indiana, one day I'm a farmer, so I was trucking, and so I was listening to the Indiana radio broadcast of the Nebraska game. Them guys were so high. You swore they must have been drinking tons before the game because they were so happy. And it was just good to see, some programs being up there that they are just so damn happy winning and being at the top of the game.
Well,
And
Tom,
so,
I hate to rain on your parade just a little bit, but those teams are riding high, yes, but they're not riding high because they've beaten any of the blue bloods. They
I
haven't
agree.
taken any of those teams down.
You're right, but they still. I mean, Indiana's going to have a good season no matter what happens.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
They've already accomplished it.
In their realm.
Shoot, even if they lose to Purdue at this point, now that would be a ridiculous situation,
Right.
but nobody's expecting. But even if they did, they'd be 10-2.
But I mean, and Mark, the last time I was on this on the show with you here a few weeks ago, the scheduling is terrible, right? And so we're going to have, it doesn't matter whether it's SEC, Big 12, the Big 10, you're not going to have the best two teams. I mean, at least if you had two divisions, you would know who the best team is that comes out of the conference championship, right?
You don't think if Ohio State runs the table that Oregon and Ohio State aren't the best teams in the Big 10?
Might be, but if Indiana beats them, then where are we at?
Indiana's going to the Big 10 championship game.
Okay, so is Indiana really the runner-up?
Well, they're not the runner-up if they win the Big 10 championship game.
No. But you have so many teams that it's just like Ohio State. They have, or Penn State. They didn't play Michigan. They didn't play Iowa. There's so many teams that they haven't played.
Sure. Oregon.
And if you had two divisions, it gets narrowed down. I don't care if one division's worse.
Well,
Do you see what I mean?
Hang on, Tom. You're partially right if you're going to go back in time and reduce the Big 10. But if they went to divisions now, you would miss just the same amount of teams. You would just have divisions. You're
right.
still playing the same amount of teams in the same size league. So you're still missing the same number of teams.
Right, but if you took SEC West and SEC East, you would have somebody that maybe run the table in each one that got there, or be one loss and would get there.
So, Tom, let's stay with the Big 10 just to be consistent. If we went back to divisions, you'd have 9-team divisions.
8 games.
You'd play 8 games against your division, and you'd only play one team in the other division.
What difference does it make?
Hang on. You'd only play one team in the other division, and that game would rotate. So you would only play. So if you're Iowa, and let's say your division is the west half of the country, we could add all those.
Right.
I've done this, so we can name off the teams. Okay, you're only going to play Ohio State 1 out of every 9 years. You're going to play Maryland 1 out of every 9 years. Michigan 1 out of. So you're going to play Oregon every year, but you're only going to play Ohio State 1 out of every 9 years, and they play in the same conference.
Let's say you only have an 8 game, like the SEC.
Well, then you're not playing anybody in the other division.
What difference does it make?
What does it make? You're in the same conference, and you're not going to play teams ever being in the same conference.
Yeah, so you're going to play them in the championship.
No, when is Minnesota going to go to a Big 10 championship game?
When they win the West.
Minnesota and Michigan are rivals, supposedly, and have been forever. They play for the
Mark, we've thrown history out, right?
Okay. I'm just making a point that Michigan and Minnesota would never play. Never.
Yeah.
The leagues, the problem is the leagues are too big. I'm not arguing that there shouldn't be divisions, just the conferences are too big.
Yeah. So we should have 8 conferences, and then the winner of each conference goes to the playoffs. That's what we should have. You get my point? But if you had an eight league in each one, then you've got the best team out through tiebreakers, head to head, playing in the championship game, and go on. Do you get my drift?
I got you, Tom. Anything else tonight?
Okay. No, I'll let you go. But
All right. Well,
no,
thanks for
it's
stopping
good
by.
to see. I like the stories of some of the teams that we probably won't hear about
I
again
agree with
for a
you.
while.
I love it too.
Yeah, makes college
I
football
get
worthwhile watching.
tired of talking about Ohio State and Georgia and Alabama every night.
Well, I enjoy Michael calling and talking about Purdue.
Yeah,
Jeffrey talking about Indiana.
that's
I
right.
love that. I just
Minnesota Dave calls.
Yep, Minnesota Dave. I love all them stories.
Yeah.
You know. And I predict Minnesota's going to beat Penn State tomorrow. That's my prediction.
I have predicted that too. I should show the evidence
Yep.
of that. Actually, I have made
Yep.
that same prediction.
I believe Minnesota will beat them. So,
all right, Tom.
Franklin can't win a big game. Yep. Bye.
Well, thanks for calling. All right, let's wrap it up here. Jackson's showing up. Jackson, what's going on?
It's going pretty good. How you doing tonight, Mark?
I'm great, Jackson. What's the
Oh,
good
man.
word?
Just looking forward to an exciting slate of college football tomorrow with Indiana, Ohio State, BYU, Arizona State, Army, Notre Dame, Alabama, Oklahoma, and much, much more games that are on the horizon. It's going to be
Okay.
fun. You were talking a little bit about Penn State, Minnesota.
Yes.
It's funny, though, like 5 years ago, that was under the radar in 2019 compared to Alabama LSU that week. And Minnesota basically showed everyone in the nation, hey, don't forget about us. We're right here too, you know. And that was a fun game to watch. And, you know, this week looks kind of sloppy. So I always say about sloppy weeks, upsets are coming. Kind of like Game of Thrones, winter's coming. It could happen in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I hope it happens for your sake, Mark.
We took a stab at it. So those are my picks for tomorrow. There's a bunch of more picks than that. I pick about 20 games, but that's the first 5 or 6. Taking a shot with Minnesota, pulling off the upset against Penn State at home.
There you go. I mean, always got to take a shot because, I mean, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, I always say.
There will be upsets. So we
Upsets
just
are
don't know
coming.
where those are coming. But I am pretty sure that between Minnesota, Penn State, Texas A&M, Auburn, Indiana, Ohio State, and Florida, Ole Miss, that one of those games is going to be an upset.
Maybe Kansas, Colorado could be an upset. That's another one right there.
Well, actually, Kansas is a 2.5-point favorite. No,
Yeah.
wait, hang on just a second. Regardless, that wouldn't really be an upset. It's only a 2.5-point spread. Colorado's a 2.5-point
Yep.
favorite.
It was funny that the last time those schools played each other, it was the last year where Colorado was in the Big 12 in 2010. And in the fourth quarter, Colorado was leading 45-17. Then Kansas was scoring 35 unanswered points. I believe that was the one of 2 years that Turner Gill was the head coach of Kansas.
There you go.
So I remember watching a little bit of the highlights of that game that day when I was 13 years old. So I thought that was a pretty fun game right there. But Nebraska, they need a huge win because they got that long losing streak against Wisconsin, which dates back to the 2012 Big Ten title game. And we know Wisconsin needs a win too. Honestly, I'm feeling like Wisconsin wins against Nebraska, but tell you the truth, I want to see Nebraska win for our friend Justin.
Yeah, Justin could use some good news. He could use a 1-score win.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, I was telling Jeffrey the other day in Austin where the Nebraska just kind of feels like Charlie Brown at the pitcher's mound every time they play in November. Every time they try to have something going on, it just blows up in their face. It's like, what'd they do to you, November? Good grief. What did Nebraska ever do to you? And oh man, 10.5. That's a little too low for SMU Virginia.
Yeah.
I take it that the odds makers have not watched SMU all season.
I don't know. I like the points in that one myself.
Like you said, it could happen. Upsets can happen this week.
They do. They do every week.
Oh yeah.
There will be upsets somewhere.
Yeah. Somewhere, somehow.
Everybody in the chat, call your upset before we sign off. Call your upset for tomorrow, and don't give me like a 2-point game, 2-point spread. I want a real upset. Everybody in the chat, one upset. What is it? What's it going to be tomorrow? We want an upset. Where's the upset? Where is it? Anybody? Going once, going. Florida beats Ole Miss, Troy says. Maryland over Iowa. Okay, I'll take that as an upset. That's like a 6.5-point spread. Penn State gets upset, Adam says. We've got another Florida choice. Jim's going to be upset.
Easy money's got to go.
We've got another one with Rob saying Penn State goes down. We've got Dave chiming in with Florida.
Ooh, here we go.
Okay.
I like what easy money's got. Army over Ole Miss, Army over Notre Dame.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That would upset some things. That would get some things cranked up. That would vault Army up the rankings and send Notre Dame to the sideline. That would be the end of their season.
It would not surprise me if Army keeps it close with Notre Dame, because, I mean, we've seen Army over the last few years keeping it close with Power 5 schools, with Oklahoma in 2018 and Michigan in 2019 at double overtime. It would not surprise me. I mean, I know they got routed by LSU last year, but still, though, Army's going to bring their best game against Notre Dame. And, the fact that they're not being talked about compared to Indiana, Ohio State, and other games, that's got to rile them up.
Got some Indiana picks and got some Army picks. We got an Army pick from Cheryl. There we go.
Oh, yeah. It's a wild
All right, Jackson. One. Well, enjoy the football tomorrow.
I plan to.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too, Mark. Stay safe, stay warm. It's cold out.
It is a little chilly out there. I had to send a picture to my kids because I went for my walk today, and I put a jacket on for the first time since I've lived here. Did throw a jacket on. Well, I threw a jacket on yesterday. So the last 2 days, I've had a jacket on. All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Yes, I'll give you a free pick here. Here's one you can take to the bank. Ohio State 38, Indiana 17. There you go. All right, we'll see you for Ole Miss and Florida post-game, and then all the instant analysis that we provide throughout the day here at the Voice of College Football, and we will see you after the primetime games on Saturday right here at the Voice of College Football. And buy my book. The link's in the description section. Well worth your while. Great read. You love college football, you'll love the book. It's that easy. See you next time. All right, Adam had a super chat. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it. I don't get any super chats, so I don't even look for them. Mark, if South Carolina beats Clemson and wins out, how can you possibly keep them out of the playoffs? Because they've lost 3 games. That's how we can keep them out. All right. Hall of Fame City Gaming. Mark, have you seen tape on Ohio State commit Bo Jackson? No, I have not seen any tape on Bo Jackson since 1990. That would be the last tape I saw on Bo Jackson. See you guys tomorrow night.